You probably noticed how much I like the AIRA modules. They're incredible. Connecting them with a System 1, connecting them with my Euro rack, using them alone. They're amazing and incredibly affordable. But they're really incredible when you realize that they come with a free software program called the AIRA Modular Customizer. 15 submodules, 15 additional modules that you configure any way you want by creating a patch on the Mac, on Windows, on the iPad, or on an Android tablet. And the way that those patches are changed in the hardware, well, when you use a computer, you use a micro USB cable and you connect it to the module on the back of the module, and any changes that you make in the software will be reflected in the sound of the module. When you're using an Android tablet or an Apple iPad, what's really ingenious is that Roland has worked it out so that you send the patches as audio, little bursts of audio out of the headphone jack using a stereo jack, and that audio is sort of patched into the front of the module. There's a little remote in jack on the front of each module, and the patches are updated. When you make a change, you hear that change. When you hit the arrow at the top of the screen, the light blinks on the module and you send the patch to the module. What's even cool as a side note, kind of a little secret, is there's no editor. The editing software, by the way, is free and amazing, but the editing software is for the laptops and iPads. But you can actually save all your patches and then use an iPhone or an Android phone and just send the audio. You can't edit it on your iPhone, but you can actually just send the audio files. So you could carry around a little portable, your phone and update your software, or your friends could share patches with you. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. And so, well, as you see, that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to actually send the patches that we'll create just out of the headphone jack. Let's get started. Let's take a look at the software. Let's look under the hood. Let's see how we configure things when we start creating a new sound, when we start customizing a new module, creating our own effects. Typically, you will start by selecting the module that you want to customize by touching the gear menu. And in this case, we're going to focus on the bit raiser. So I've selected the bit raiser, and here it is. It comes up with patch cords exactly as the hardware is configured. When I move a knob on the screen of my iPad, there's a visual feedback cue on the module itself. A light blinks telling me that the new setting was sent to the module, that the module has received the setting. And that's because I patched up the audio jack before I started this introduction. You'll also notice on here there are all these wires kind of connected in the module, because it's showing us, it's showing you, it's indicating exactly the way internally these hardware knobs and buttons are connected to the algorithm itself. And the way that they are connected and the way that you can now connect to the module is with this new concept that Roland is introducing called a gripher. And what that is it lets you kind of grab the signal, the control, and reconnect it somewhere else. Connect it to your own submodule or connect it to itself in unique ways. Each module is laid out quite similarly, with 2 large knobs, a couple of attenuators, a couple of other control knobs, and maybe 2 buttons or switches. There are little differences, but they're pretty much the same. A volume control at the bottom, inputs and outputs on the bottom left and bottom right. But this gripher idea is everywhere. You can see it in little red labels on the screen, and here on our interface you can see it down in the bottom, these little red jacks. Those represent the griffers, the gripher jacks, and the inputs and outputs. Well, gripher 1, large knob on the left. Gripher 2, large knob on the right. Gripher 3, the smaller knobs. Gripher 5 and 6, the push buttons. And what we see in the interface here is that the gripher 1 knob is or gripper 1 is connected to the input level attenuator of the sort of sample rate of the bit raiser. We can see that gripper 2 is connected to the input attenuator level of the cutoff frequency. And so what we're doing here is, well, what Roland has done for us is they've already internally patched the controls on the front, on the hardware, to the parameters of the algorithm under the hood. But what's amazing is they're letting us disconnect the patches and rewire the patches. And better than that, what they're letting us do is drop in any of 15 other modules and patch those to these connection points or to any of the jacks on the module itself. So you'll notice that each module has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 jacks or so, and we can connect outputs from these other 15 submodules. When I saw this, I lost sleep, because all of a sudden these modules, which are already quite cool and quite fun and sounded amazing and clean and 96K and 24-bit and stereo, and they're light as a feather and they make my System 1M go crazy, me too, well, all of a sudden they've given me more. They're really opening up a world of sound design possibilities to me and to you. Let's take a look at these 15 submodules for a second and just see what they are. I promise we're going to make some interesting sounds, and I'm going to very carefully take you step by step through how to connect the wires, connect them to jacks, connect them to physical controls with the griffers. But maybe it'd be nice to just take a little quick tour and see what kind of customizers are waiting for you when you open the app. And by the way, the app's free. Come on. Crazy. Beautiful. So what we've got here is we've got an LFO. We've got an ADSR. We've got a noise generator. Maybe we'll start by just explaining those three first. Some of you might not know what an LFO is or an ADSR is. Maybe you have some idea what a noise generator might do. Generates noise, right? But LFOs are basic building blocks, low frequency oscillators. We use them as clocks. We use them to control and create periodic control of a signal. Those will wiggle a knob for you. Those will create a cyclical event. An ADSR is an envelope generator, creates a function, creates a kind of transient and that has a certain contour or shape. They're typically used to create the sort of overall envelope of a traditional synth patch: attack, decay, sustain, and release. But they can be connected to all kinds of parameters, and you can imagine when we start building patches, we might connect the ADSRs to our sample rate depth or our cutoff frequency, and so that's going to really add a kind of gestural quality to that parameter or that effect. Noise generator, and in fact it's a dual noise generator, will produce white noise or pink noise or even colors in between that, different timbres. It's almost like a noise oscillator. And all of these modules, even these three that I've talked about, have quite a lot of control capabilities and possibilities in themselves. Okay? Let's see what else is under the hood. A sample and hold module, one of my favorites. I always loved playing with sample and holds. What a sample and hold module does, kind of a modifier, it takes a signal, a source, like noise or an LFO, and it samples it. It sort of picks out little bits of it. So if I have a sawtooth wave that's going beep, just rising, a sample and hold might make a staircase out of that. So it creates a unique new control signal by sampling another signal. Very useful for creating repeating patterns, complex patterns. I love them. Ring modulator, a classic device in electronic music. A classic way of producing rich, complex spectrum out of two simple waves. It produces sum and difference frequencies when it's a kind of multiplier. And in our case here, we have the ability to sort of cycle it on and off. And also we have the ability to just patch in whatever audio sources we might want and create these unique, complex, harmonic and inharmonic artifacts. So it's funny because many times when you're working with digital gear and digital audio, you're spending a lot of your time trying to make sure the sound is clean. And yet sometimes what you really want is the sound to be kind of dirty or sort of rich and harmonic, and ring modulators are a great tool for that. So we've got a ring modulator in here, and that's wonderful. And by the way, when I say we have one, you don't have one of anything. In the modular customizer, you have an LFO. It's like a template. You want to add 20 LFOs to your custom patch, you want 12 ring modulators, etc. Now, I may be over-exaggerating, I tend to. But the bottom line is, it's virtually limitless how many copies of any of these modules you can use in a custom patch or custom reconfiguration of the hardware. Okay? There's a couple of filters, a 6 dB filter, a 1-pole filter, and these are multi-mode filters with controllable resonance. So bandpass, high pass, low pass, switchable, and then you can also control the resonance, maybe with an ADSR, maybe with an LFO. And a 12 dB filter or a 2-pole filter, same set of controls. Stereo into all these modules, typically, stereo out of all these modules, typically. There's a tone filter, again, where you can just choose high, mid, or low, control the frequency, control the level. There's amplifier, a dual amplifier, and this is kind of nice when you're trying to really create a gated signal, where you want to create some kind of a patch that turns off. It's weird to think of an amplifier as being essential to make a sound stop, but in most synthesizers, it's amplifiers, voltage-controlled amplifiers, that let us stop a sound. Normally we think that turns them up, amplify, but in fact, a voltage-controlled amplifier is something that we can control and ultimately use to gate the sound or silence the sound. There's a mixer, 4 in, 1 out. There's a stereo mixer. In fact, it's a dual stereo mixer. And these mixers do not have controls on them. Yes, they have knobs. You can adjust their levels and you can set and freeze the levels, but you don't use other controls on the interface or other modules to affect them. Maybe the next version of modules that Roland makes available to us will have even controllable mixers and controllable amplifiers. They probably will. But right now, I'm pretty happy with these, and they're doing quite a lot for us. I use them to attenuate my signals, to adjust them, to sort of distill down a complicated patch and simplify things when I'm finally going to the output. So they're essential and wonderful tools. There are a few more esoteric modules, the last 4. I'll just state their names, and then I'll give you a little overview. Curve control, gate divider, trig to delay time, and MIDI clock to gate. So I'll jump to the trig to delay time CV first. This is a custom module that allows you to get a trigger in and adjust the delay settings of the Demora. So it puts out a custom kind of control signal and message that allows you to clock your delay times and synchronize it with MIDI clock from other devices or other control sources. So it's very useful, but it's really useful only in designing sounds for that or customizing for that module. Curve control, very important. A wonderful little module. It has a variety of kind of response curves. When I turn a knob, I'm essentially making a straight line, going from 0 to 1. Or in the case of MIDI, I'd be going from, let's say, 0 to 127. But boy, when I'm a musician, when I'm playing a piece of music, or when I'm playing my instrument or whatever, the way that I actually make a crescendo, the way that I actually make a gesture, a sound gesture, that's not, that's not too expressive. So Roland has given us a variety of curves that when I turn the knob from 0 to 1 or 0 to 100%, it actually has a logarithmic curve, or it actually has a kind of sinusoidal curve, or an exponential curve, or a linear curve. But you have a choice of customizing your control signals. Very, very important. Kind of subtle. Most people don't get to it till a little while, but it makes all the difference in the world in terms of how responsive and musical your systems are. Gate divider. Pretty nice. A kind of clock divider. So when you're using an LFO as a gate and it's sending pulses, well, wouldn't you like maybe the rhythm of another LFO to be triplets against that? Or you're sending quarter notes and you'd like another module to respond, or part of the module to respond in eighth notes or 16th notes. So it's a way of unifying the kind of inner rhythmic activity of your patch. Very important. We're doing a lot in production now. We do that a lot with our sound design. It's so wonderful that Roland thought, let's give you a way of synchronizing your clocks. And that's what this little gate divider does. Very cool. Lastly, and most important to maybe many of you, maybe most of you, is this module that does MIDI clock to gate. So when you have a USB connection made from, let's say, Ableton Live or Logic that puts out MIDI clock, then this module in your patch will synchronize the timings and rhythm of your patch to the actual tempo and clock of the DAW that you might be working with. Really important and useful when you're doing production-oriented sound design, as I'm sure some of you will be when you get yourself a set of these modules and start working with the modular customizer. So let's make a patch, but let's really start from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the little page icon at the top here and disconnect all the patch cords. So now my BitRaiser does nothing, it's not listening to anything, and so what I want to do is maybe bring out a module that we can play with. Let's bring out a filter, and let's maybe bring out one additional module, a noise generator. So we're going to take the output of the noise, plug it into the input of the filter. Hey, this is a dual noise generator, and that filter has two inputs. Why don't we take the top noise to one and the bottom noise to the other? We're going to take that output right out to our output jacks and just listen to it for a second. See how it works. Low pass filter setting, and we're kind of controlling it just with the virtual knobs. So what might be nice now is to use the hardware and control the filter and maybe even control the noise. The filter has two knobs on it, cutoff frequency and resonance. Let's use the two big knobs on the front panel, Griffer 1 and Griffer 2. So I'm going to use Griffer 1 to control the cutoff frequency, connecting it to that input. We're going to use Griffer 2 to control the resonance, connecting it to this input. Now that our filtered noise is working, we might like to, and it's oscillating, we might like to add something to this that, kind of creates a kind of wah-wah effect. Like that. So in order to do that, let's use a low frequency oscillator and kind of double duty with it. Let's put a low frequency oscillator in, and we're going to take the output of the low frequency oscillator and have it also affect the cutoff frequency of the filter. Now, I like what's starting to happen, but what I might like is to control the rate of the low frequency oscillator. Slow it down or speed it up. I'll use gripper 3 for that. So I'm going to connect gripper 3 to the rate of the LFO. Not bad, right? Now, I guess the only thing is we probably do need some way of making this start and stop. And so in order to do that, we probably will need an amplifier. And so let's take the patch cord, go into an amp, take the output of our amp to the output. The amp's turned down, so I hear nothing. Is there a way to make the amp turn on and turn off under maybe user control? Yes, there is. I have a really great way. Watch. Let's put an envelope generator in and connect the output of the envelope generator to the 2 control inputs of the amp. But I need to trigger that envelope generator. And you know what's cool? Our module has these buttons. Grip 5 and Grip 6. Why don't I use that button as a trigger? So if I connect the button, now the button is, and I'll change the release time. Pretty cool patch. What have I done? Let's reiterate. I haven't used any of the BitRaiser algorithm. I've made my own synthesizer patch using the modular customizer. I've used some of the basic building blocks of a synthesizer: noise generator, filter, envelope generator, amplifier, and a low frequency oscillator. And I used a button as a trigger to make this little almost echo patch. Simple. I do like the control of the LFO rate. That's kind of nice. So, there's a lot you can do. And I know you're going to have fun as you start to explore with confidence, and as you see, quite simple elegance, the way the customizer works. What's really important about this is the following. I've written a lot of software. I have a lot of software programs. I even have a lot of modules, Eurorack modules, that are programmable. But you should see the kind of programming you have to do to create an LFO, or an oscillator, or a sample and hold, or a filter. Forget it. I mean, you've got a couple of years of programming class. You should buy my book. It might help. But you don't have to buy my book. You don't have to learn audio programming, because you have this phenomenal customizer that actually does the coding for you, and all you're really doing is patching. Thanks for doing that for us, Roland, because that really makes these modules amazingly powerful and amazingly versatile. So I hope I've shown you enough to get you going and get you started. The app is free. You got to buy yourself one of these modules and start having fun, because as you see, one module is a whole synthesizer. Have fun. Thanks for watching.